They're dead, Dave.
What, Captain Hollister?
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What, Tom Hunter? What, Selby? Not Chen.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Welcome to Everybody is Dead Dave, the Red Dwarf review podcast where we make our way through every single episode of Red Dwarf in order, and we are up to Series 6 now. We're getting towards the end of the original run. Right. Every week we're joined every week. It's me, Phil, and my co-host Adam. Say hello, Adam.
Hello, everyone.
And we are making our way, as I said, through every single episode of Red Dwarf. Me for the, I don't know, if you include times I've gone through the whole series, maybe third or fourth time. Adam, I believe it's...
Yes, my very first time. I'm getting used to it. So, first 5 series I've got down now, nearly at the end of the 6th. And I think it's fair to say I'm a pretty firm fan of this show. I'm enjoying it. Otherwise, as I think I've said to Phil before, if I wasn't, I don't think we'd still be doing this. But yeah, I'm having a good time. And can't believe we're nearly at the end of Series 6 already. Doesn't feel like a month ago since we started.
I know, crazy, isn't it? Doesn't time fly? We're up to the episode Emohawk, Polymorph 2.
Yes, a sort of, I guess, is this the first proper sequel, if you like,
yeah,
to Red Dwarf?
It is, and it was originally meant to be called Polymorph 2 Emohawk, but apparently, according to the IMDb trivia section, one of the 2 writers thought that sounded a bit too much like a football score. Polymorph 2 Emohawk something.
Yeah, no, I vouch for that. Yeah.
So we switched them around instead. So yeah, our first sequel, and I'll read you the synopsis. Starbug is attacked by a Space Corps enforcement probe for looting derelict ships. Starbug crash lands on a Gelf moon where Lister must marry the Gelf leader's daughter in exchange for an oxygen-breathing unit.
Yes.
So we've got... This is an episode where we've got lots of returning elements. I mean, it's probably got the most returning elements from previous episodes in any episode of Red Dwarf, I think.
Okay, yeah. There is a lot.
I mean, you've got... We've never met this type of Gelf before, Gelf standing for genetically engineered life form. But we've met other Gelfs before. The Polymorph itself is a type of Gelf. And this is the first time we've met these type of Gelfs, but we've met Gelfs before, we've had the Polymorph before, and there are other things that come up a bit later that also get a sort of revival in this episode as well. So I like it. I like the fact that we're getting all these little callbacks to previous episodes. I do love it when they do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've discussed before, there's so much they could draw on, and sometimes they go for like the really, I guess, small or niche things, and sometimes they go for the more obvious things. And this one does a bit of both, I think. Obviously you've got the central thing you mentioned of of a polymorph appearing again, but you've also got some little bits and pieces that we, as you say, we will discuss, but are quite unexpected, but also quite rewarding. So yeah, we'll get to that. But
there were, as someone who has watched the whole series before several times, I couldn't remember about. There were several things that I couldn't remember about this episode, and afterwards I was like, oh, okay, it's like that. Because I couldn't remember if this polymorph was going to be the one that was still on the ship. Because can you remember at the end of that first polymorph episode, there was a second polymorph that was apparently still on Red Dwarf.
Yes, yeah.
And I couldn't, this is not the same polymorph.
No.
So that one, who knows where that one went?
Yeah, that one's just that. Well, I say it was on Red Dwarf. It's probably still on there. Of course, they're not on Red Dwarf
wherever
at the minute,
Red Dwarf
so it's
is,
probably
it's a big ship.
It's a huge ship. It's lurking around there somewhere, I reckon.
So this episode starts with Rimmer running an emergency drill, which Lister and the cats are not there for at all. They do not like this drill.
They don't know, and
they don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah, and I've got to say though, this whole opening segment, if you like the drill and the stuff that takes place in the cockpit, I've got to be honest, Phil, it didn't really do it for me this time around. Like the whole first, I think I wrote the whole first 10 minutes or so, like the first third of the episode just wasn't really wasn't really grabbing me, which surprised me because normally, even when we've had episodes like this, where, because of course, the title doesn't necessarily mean of an episode we're getting, 30 minutes of that title. It could be something that appears halfway through or towards the end. We've had that before. But I always feel in the past when that's been the case, I've still been sort of, engaged or with whatever's been going on beforehand. And yeah, I don't know. I just wasn't with it. I wasn't really a fan of most of the jokes personally. Nothing against the actors. I thought they put in a fine job as always. But yeah, there was just something about it that wasn't grabbing me. But what did you think of this whole opening segment?
I can see I do see what you mean there. That it wasn't my favourite. And in fact, this whole episode itself, I would say in terms of the comedy, I didn't find a lot of it particularly funny. When we get into the bit later scenes, I think it's a good action adventure. But yes. I wasn't particularly laughing out loud at a lot of it. So as a comedy, I don't think this episode necessarily works massively well.
Sure.
But as a action adventure, after we get past this opening scene, it's a lot better. But yeah, this opening scene, I do think, I think you're probably right. We get a few jokes about, Rimmer being all bureaucratic, and what was he says?
You think I'm a petty-minded bureaucratic nincompoop who delights in enforcing pernickety regulations because he gets some sort of perverse pleasure out of it. And in many ways, you're absolutely damn right.
At least he knows who he is.
Yeah, he knows who he is, and I've got to say, Crichton's reaction to Rimmer's self-description was something I did chuckle at. He's just sort of nodding in the background.
Yeah, he's just like, yep.
And the other only main thing I liked in this opening thing was one of Kat's lines, actually. When they're talking about haircuts.
Oh, yes.
And he says,
I have got hair like yours, just not on my head.
Just because that caught me completely by surprise, and I found that really funny. But yeah, a lot of the jokes, like the Space Corps directive joke this time around, and I know we've said before, like, you told me this was going to become a recurring thing, and I think I said a few episodes ago, I'm with it as long as, the punchline of the joke is something that makes me laugh, then I'm here for it being recurring.
Yeah.
But this time, for me at least, it fell a bit flat on this one.
I quite liked the first part of it, where Crichton had his first line of going
68250? But sir, surely that's impossible without at least one live chicken and a rabbi.
If it had stopped there, I think it would have been better, but because they went on to a second bit of it, and made it clear that the chicken was for a sacrifice,
yes.
I think that actually weakened it a bit, because I think the comedy of it came from leaving it up to your own imagination what was going on with that chicken and that rabbi.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a case of, as Adam always seems to say, a joke going on for maybe a tad too long throughout this whole opening segment, because it's still filmed in front of a live studio audience, right? Or is it pre-recorded and then shown? It's live, right?
I think it's live, but
if it's live, I just noticed towards the end of this, again, the first 10 minutes, but before all the stuff with the being chased or and all that sort of stuff. Towards the end of it, even the audience response seems like less full than normal. Do you know what I mean? Like the laughter seems less full. And I don't know. I just think this whole opening segment, everything involved in it, I think you basically could have got to the main crux of this episode quicker, and still have some of those like good jokes in there. But yeah, I don't know. The first third of this episode just felt a bit lackluster for me personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was a lot in there that probably could have been trimmed down massively. The whole stuff about hair probably could have been trimmed down. Rimmer's little sort of treaty on the people with the shortest hair always win. Is that true in history? I don't know. Must be some long-haired people that have won some wars at some point.
Well, surely the Vikings.
Won
something.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this whole first section gets sort of ended by them being confronted by a ship, which is a spinning disc thing, as we see it. It looks like this weird spinning disc. I wasn't too sure on the effect here. I don't know what you thought. The spinning image looked very 2D as opposed, but because there's a shot later where the orb is like more stationary, and I think when it's stationary, it looks more like a model.
But when it's spinning, I don't know the technique, but I think it's like, you take the photo of the 3D image, and then it was almost like they were flipping it just back and forth, but on like a... So I'd be hesitant to call it what we know as like computer graphics, but sort of whatever the old school...
Do you mean like at the beginning of Superman, where the Kryptonians are in the triangle? Is it that kind of thing, where a flat image is just being kind of put on... flipped?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just, pre that weird phase where it's like pre-mainstream CG, or what we'd call CG, and it's like the last remnants of that sort of style. But yeah, I preferred it when it was stationary, though. I don't know why they just didn't do like have the two models sort of hovering and then because it was the whole thing of it warping. So I don't know why they just didn't add like a warp effect as opposed to it. Because I took it as the spinning was it warping, because then when we cut back to the cockpit, they were reacting to it like things were setting on fire. So yeah, it was just it was an odd choice of effect, I thought.
Yeah, it's the Space Core Enforcement Probe, and it's charging them with looting Space Core derelicts, which, as Crichton says, they're as guilty as the man behind the grassy knoll.
Yes, yeah.
Which is another JFK reference. We're getting these repetitive JFK references. It seems to be the thing Red Dwarf goes back to in terms of historical events. Is JFK and Hitler quite frequently.
Yes, well, I guess it's two that most people know about, isn't it? Or two maybe the public would have awareness of.
Absolutely, yeah. So they are going to try and evade it by heading into Gelf space to outrun it. It's there's like an action scene where they're getting fired upon, but there's not that many model shots in it. There's a few exterior model shots, but mostly it's kind of all cockpit based.
Yes.
But I thought they did quite a good job working within the limitations there, presumably budget limitations, of making it still feel like quite a tense action scene, even though majority of the shots were them kind of flinging themselves around the cockpit.
Yes. Yeah, they do a good job. It's that old school necessity of making it look realistic, even though they aren't really doing that much.
Yeah. I like the bit where Rimmer thinks he's lost them, and he was like, oh no, I was looking at the wrong screen.
Yes, yeah, that was a good gag.
And then they eventually crash land on a Gelf moon.
Yeah, Starbug crashed again. Who would have thunk it? So the most
only got
indestructible
the one now.
ship.
They don't have the excuse of having loads in the bay that they can switch between anymore. They've got the one Starbug. They can't afford to keep crashing it.
They do, but as I think Lister says, they can just auto repair most of it. So
yeah, that was a nice little
feature,
throwaway line. Auto repair, handy.
Yeah, that's a good MacGuffin.
Yeah, but most of their belongings are destroyed in this crash, and they don't have many to begin with. They were already low on supplies at the beginning. They were having conversations about having to eat the moss off of asteroids and things because they're so low on supplies. And most of their things are destroyed here. I like the bit where they were talking about it being destroyed. Lister wasn't in the room, and they find out the cat finds Lister's guitar not destroyed, and he destroys it so that he can say it was destroyed in the crash. Because as we all know, Lister cannot play the guitar very well,
even though he thinks he's the next John Bon Jovi or something like that. So.
Yeah, John Bon Jovi. Does John Bon Jovi play the guitar? I suppose he might do.
Does he?
I don't know. I just think of him as a singer, but maybe
for some reason I just thought I was like, ooh, guitar, let's think. And for some reason Bon Jovi just came to my head. But yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if John
not Jimi Hendrix, not Brian May.
Hey, the 80s is a genre I delve into, so that was clearly the first one on my mind. But yes, yeah.
So they very quickly realise they've got to trade with the Gelf because they just don't have the supplies, and they don't have the critical thing is they don't have a working oxygen unit, so they can't take off. They would have a few minutes of air in space, and that is it. So they're going to have to try and trade with the Gelf. I like Lister goes a bit Del Boy with this trading. He takes along his suitcase full of Swiss watches and Levi jeans. Yes,
yeah, sort of very, like I say, Del Boyish or street market type thing, saying, "Oh, very, very good quality stuff, like this will do you. I mean, I'm sure we've all been the subject of that somewhere around the world, whether it's here in the UK or elsewhere. But I had it once in Hong Kong. Some guy tried to peddle me a Rolex, but at least he didn't even try and be subtle. He was like, "It's not a real Rolex, but it looks like one." And I was like, I admire your honesty, but I'm still not going to buy it.
Yeah.
So
I remember being on holiday as a kid and buying loads of fake like Armani underwear and stuff like that from market stores for like 50p.
Yeah. Hey, it's an experience. We've all done it once, whether as a kid or an adult. You see something that's like fake branded, and you're like, "Yeah, that's what I'm gonna go for." But you learn quick, and now it just makes you chuckle. Now, like you say, you go around holiday stores, like places like the Canary Islands, all those little shops, and it's like, "Oh yeah, look at this like Chanel handbag that's definitely not Chanel." Oh, but you can buy it for €10, so that's a great deal.
Yeah, luckily Crichton does speak Guelph, so that's quite handy.
Yes,
I often forget that Crichton is not from the same period of time as the rest of them are, or as Lister and Rimmer. He's from quite a far in the future from them originally. Like,
yes,
when they left Earth, even the androids weren't a massive big thing, and so he knows a lot more about Gelfs, and Gelfs weren't a thing. Genetically engineered life forms weren't the thing, but he knows about them because he's further in the future. And I always forget that until something like this happens.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's moments like this in this story where, I mean, this whole part of the Gelf's homeworld just gave me really strong Return of the Jedi vibes. Like these Gelfs sort of reminded me of overgrown Ewoks, and then obviously the fact that Crichton can translate, it reinforces what I think we've said before. He has elements of like a C-3PO character. And of course, C-3PO has, what is it, like 6 million languages or something. So whenever Crichton translates in the show, I'm like, oh yeah, this is kind of like C-3PO. So this whole, I don't know whether this whole segment, or like the look of it, if you like, was like maybe a very subtle homage to that, but that's the vibes it gave me. I was like, this is like some sort of weird pastiche on the Endor scenes from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, and during the negotiations is where we see the Polymorph, which is a Emohawk, which is apparently a domesticated polymorph. So it will turn into and do its sort of owner's bidding and turn into what the owner wants it to.
Yeah, and it looked quite sweet, the little model of it that they had. Obviously a lot less, I'd say a lot less initially terrifying than the original polymorph design. But maybe I guess that's the idea. If it's been domesticated, it probably isn't going to look as vicious in its natural form, perhaps.
Yeah, well, was that its natural form, or was that the form that the Gelf wanted it to be in? I don't know.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but then we do see it in a quote unquote its natural form. Like there's the bit where it's on like Lister's head as they're walking back through the forest, and then I think we do see it in that form once on the ship. I can't remember when, but I don't know. That's what I thought anyway. I was like, okay, so this is what an Emohawk looks like as opposed to what the original polymorph looked like.
Yeah, because it does look very different to what the original polymorph looked like. So yeah, maybe. Then we get the bomb drop of the fact what they actually want for this oxygen unit in exchange. They want Lister, not his hat, not his coat.
Nope.
Lister himself. They want Lister to marry the chief's daughter.
Absolutely. A real turn of events there, I think,
Yeah. I also really like the line,
"Come on, Lister, you've dated worse."
Only due to very poor disco lighting.
Yeah, that's I think we've all had mates, or even ourselves probably have done that, where you've had mates who have either got with someone on a very drunken night out, and then they say, "Oh, I didn't see because of the lighting." So I thought that was quite a funny gag. And the whole ceremony, actually, I thought was quite funny. At first, I thought, oh, are they going to drag this out? But all the scenes around it, I really found quite funny, like the marriage, and then obviously when they go into like the hut and and she just absolutely like goes for him and how he handles it. I thought it was great.
Lister doesn't get much luck when it comes to women, really, because every
really.
time he's managed to get a kiss in somewhere, it's been either this Gelf, really big hairy Gelf person, or last time it was the brain sucking creature, wasn't it? So
yes,
not getting much luck with the kisses.
Unlucky in love, unfortunately, is Lister. But one of the funniest bits I found was when they ditched the initial escape plan, and he just sprints out the hut and goes, "New plan, leg it." The bride's comment that men, they're all bastards. I don't know why, that just made me laugh a lot.
And it works. It does work really well because they hadn't subtitled the Gelf up to that point.
No.
So we were relying on Crichton's translation or just like the general kind of like, okay, we get that they're angry. We get, from the tone of their voice. This is the first point where we get actual subtitles for what they're saying. And it's, God, men, they're all bastards.
Yeah. So the last thing you'd expect, which I think it works really well for this scene. Anyway.
Yeah. But of course, the chief, very annoyed that his daughter has been abandoned, sends the polymorph after them, and it turns into various things en route, a stick, and eventually Lister's hat when his hat falls off. So he picks up obviously the wrong hat, puts it on his head, and takes it back into Starbug, and then we get it kind of chaining into various things, including their chicken. Interesting choice.
Yes, including a chicken, and then a can of, not Heinz, I think it said Bynes
baked beans. But very clearly.
Yeah, clearly they... Yeah, I wonder how they skirted that one, because, I mean, take away the words, it's very clearly meant to be a can of Heinz baked beans. It's the same colours, it's the same, like, design. They just changed one letter, so I don't know what the reasoning behind that was, but, yeah, I thought the effect of the polymorph, like how it morphed again, like it's still good as it was back in, I think, it was series 3, wasn't it? I think I first saw it, like the whole, how it moves around. And they were really inventive with how it traveled this time. Like, there's moments where it turned into like a paper airplane or like an RC, a slinky or an RC car. I really like those. I thought it was just really, rather than just have it be one thing and always like slither around or have it be played off screen. Because I think that happened a lot first time around. A lot of it was off screen, how it moved around. So I actually we saw how it moved around and how it adapted.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think if we saw it. We did see it bounce as a ball last time, I think. And that was probably the only movement we really saw. Yeah, but eventually the cat kind of smells something is wrong. The cat's super smelling again and sniffs his way to the baked beans when the polymorph then bursts out of the beans and suckers his head. He falls to the floor and he emerges. And this is the next callback to a previous episode. He's Dwayne Dibley.
Dwayne Dibley, which probably got one of the biggest cheers from the audience. Like when he came up, there was a lot of clapping and cheering.
Apparently, they had to record this scene so many times because the audience clapping and whooping went on too long. And they just couldn't continue the scene because it had just been like a ridiculous amount of gap that the scene it didn't make sense to carry on. So they had to just keep on recording it and recording it and recording it until the audience it had died down a little bit and they weren't quite whooping and cheering as much.
Yes, yeah. No, but I mean it's great. Obviously Dwayne Dibley when he appeared the first time was really funny, partly because it's the complete antithesis of Cat, and Danny John Jules embodies that to a T, and just seeing him emerge with his little bowl cut and big teeth, it was a great reveal.
Yeah. And
I really loved it.
We first, of course, saw Dwayne Dibley back in the Back to Reality episode. He was when the squid, Despair Squid, had made them all think they were actually in a reality game, and they came out of it. That was Cat's real world, in inverted commas, personality. And I don't know if you remember when we did the first Polymorph episode. I can't remember if I said I was exactly what I was expecting, but I was like, oh, something didn't happen that I was expecting to happen. And it was this. Because it's been about 10 years since I had done a run through of watching these episodes. I had remembered that Dwayne Dibley had been created, the cat had been turned into Dwayne Dibley by a polymorph, and thought that was the first time we were going to see Dwayne Dibley, was that first polymorph episode. And then it didn't happen. I was like, okay. Not now then. So that was what that was all about. If you remember me saying that at the time.
It all makes sense now. But it was. I just liked it, and I thought, well, if Dwayne Dibley's coming back, even at that time, I thought, oh, there's potential for maybe more alternative versions of the leading cast to
and
return.
Indeed there was, because it then goes and takes Rimmer's negativity, snideness, bitterness, and he becomes Ace Rimmer.
Ace Rimmer, yes.
Which got another good cheer from the crowd, from the audience.
It did. So clearly, I think that it shows that these side characters, if you like, were well received the first time around. Because when we discussed the Ace Rimmer episode, we really enjoyed him, like his characterization. Again, how he's the complete opposite of Rimmer, and how Chris Barry plays him. And you get all the old catchphrases in there, like what was it? "Smoke me a kipper, I'll be back for breakfast."
And Cat says, "What a guy."
What a guy, which did get a big laugh as well. So yeah, they're acknowledging what's happened, but they're doing it in a quite clever way, even though it's on the nose. Like, they're not being subtle about it. It's not. I don't know. I wasn't like, oh my god, they're doing this again. It was done quite well. I enjoyed it.
And they didn't do any more than that, though. They didn't bring Lister, and Crichton didn't get suckered at any point.
No, which I thought was a well, I guess if they'd all done it, maybe it could be argued that, they might not have been able to stop it. But I don't know. It would have been cool to see all four.
Who do you think they could have, like, if we're doing callbacks to previous stories? I think Crichton maybe could have gone. Maybe they could have got him in kind of his Gunman of the Apocalypse type persona, where he's doubting himself and possibly
like the drunken
sheriff type persona.
But then I thought, well, if you've got Ace Rimmer, who's actually quite a positive character, like, maybe it wouldn't be out of the question. You could have had Crichton's, like, I think his name was Jack Bullitt, the detective from Back to Reality.
Yeah.
The one who's overconfident. With Lister, I'm not sure.
I couldn't think of anybody that would actually that you'd actually turn him into. What happened to him in the first Polymorph episode? What did it take from him? Oh, it took his fear, didn't it? It made him really brash and I'm gonna go and nut him.
Yeah, like the aggression and stuff. But yeah, maybe that's why they didn't do it. Maybe, like, obviously with Ace Rimmer and Dwayne Dibley, they're very distinctive like polar opposites, I suppose. So maybe that's why they stuck to that.
Yeah.
But once they find the other two, I guess they're like, well, we've got to find a way to stop it. And they come up with a few different ideas, don't they? A few different plans.
Yes. I can't remember what they were now, though.
Well, Ace has one idea, wasn't he? He's like,
he wants to save them, yeah. So he wants to save the last human. So he's going to flush it out of the airlock. But in doing so, it'll take him and Cat with them. And he's like, I'll put Cat out of his misery. I'll snap his neck first. Harsh. Like, okay,
it's quite
Dave
an
is the last
jump.
human.
Yeah,
Cat could be the last cat as well. Like, it's a bit harsh.
Yeah, apparently surplus to requirements.
Apparently so. Cat always gets the short end of the stick, doesn't he? He always gets forgotten about.
He does. It's a little unfair, but
Luckily, though, before he can complete his plan, I did like the bit where he was luring him into the elevator as well, into the elevator. And he's Dwayne. Cat as Dwayne, he's just clueless, and he's like, what's the plan again? And he's like, just stand there, just in front of me. And he's like he's about to snap his neck, and then Dave and Crichton burst in, and they can't do it anymore, because then that would kill Dave. So that plan gets kind of thrown away, and they're going to try and capture it instead.
Yeah, no, and then when they all join up and they all go to they all go to do it, and they plan to freeze it, don't they? That's what they go for. But Cat ends up with it, and it turns into a grenade, and of course he can't throw it away because apparently he throws like a nerd or a geek, and apparently geeks can't throw. I mean, Dwayne Dibley is very much that, I guess, like early 90s stereotype of what a nerd was, at least in the UK, the sort of, anorak wearing, big teeth, very I guess unstylish maybe is
I think
the word,
as
which
Kat
of course,
says at one point, he says, so geeky I don't even think... Oh no, somebody else says about him, maybe? So geeky I don't think he could even get into a science fiction convention.
Yes, I think that was Ace who says that. And Yeah, I think, nowadays, I think you look like I love the Dwayne Dibley side character, but whenever they like allude to him being like a nerd or a geek or a dork, in my mind, I'm like, it's a very, and it's not the show's fault, but it's a very, 90s portrayal of what a geek or dork, like, as we all, like, nerds can be stylish, and they can, yeah, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's that sort of thing, but yeah, the whole ending though, because Ace jumps on the grenade, doesn't die, but then they freeze the polymorph, and don't they excuse it away with like, it's an act of courage, isn't it? He says, oh, how did you not know it was going to damage your hard light bee? And he's like, oh, I didn't, I just wanted to save you guys, which sure, very valiant and stuff. And then the episode just sort of ends with Dwayne Dibley accidentally freezing
them,
the other three.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I'm just like, I know we've talked about before, like, this show can do really like rushed conclusions or rushed endings. But with this one, I'm kind of like, yeah, you've taken out the polymorph, but that is literally it. I don't know. I don't know what I guess I just wanted a bit more, I don't know, just a bit more closure. Like, see them dispose of it or do the thing they've done earlier this series where they're all, say, back in the cockpit and they're like, right, we've still got to look for Red Dwarf. I think they did that at the start of the season. I just thought the ending here was really weak, personally. Like,
no, I would agree with that. I think the ending was a little bit. I obviously, for practical reasons, I mean, it's a show. It's a sitcom. They have to reset the status quo.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I understand why Ace couldn't stay, for external reasons, but story logic wise, like, do they have to return all of that personality to him? Like, why? Like, if I was in that world, I'd be like, we could just leave him like this. He's much nicer. We like him like this.
Yeah, I'm surprised they wouldn't. But I just think, how I said the first 10 minutes, I was like, that it didn't need to be that long or that opening setup. Like, you could have cut a few minutes there and added it to the end to, as I say, like, have a proper closing scene, if you like. But yeah, as it stands, like, when it ended and I heard the end credits come up, I was like, oh, right, okay, then that is literally it.
And all it needed was also something in there, even not at the end, even somewhere in the middle with the Ace thing, to like just a throwaway, like just a single line of exposition that said something like, oh, if you go too long without all your full emotions and stuff, you die, or something like that. Like, there's some kind of negative consequence to this, even if you like the person you have become without that emotion. So that would have solved my issue there. But yeah, no, the ending was a bit abrupt, and as it sometimes is.
Yeah, just abrupt can work, but I just felt, for me at least, it didn't have the punch. Maybe it just sort of fell flat. Although I did notice the last little things in the ending credits. Hugh Quashry was the computer in the beginning, and I was like, what? Because, I mean, I guess he's most known, anyone who watches Holby City, he's played Rick Griffin. I don't know if he's still in it, but he was in Holby City for years and years and years and years. Doctor Who fans, he was Solomon in the Dalek New York two-parter in David Tennant's time, of course. And then the Gelf Chief was apparently Ainsley Harriott.
Was it?
That's what I rewound it. I was like, I've read that wrong. It says the Gelf Chief was Ainsley Harriott. Now,
is that
obviously? Well, when you read that name, a lot of us will think to, Ready Steady Cook, the famous chef.
I don't think it is, because I've just looked him up on IMDb, and it says Ainsley Harriott was born on the 28th in February in 1957, London.
Yes.
He's an actor known for tabloid Can't Smeg Away. Oh, maybe he is, because he did do a cooking show. Well, maybe it is.
I'm just on Wikipedia, which I know
it just doesn't mention his cooking career.
You just said the 28th of Feb 1957,
and that matches.
Yeah? That matches.
Okay, maybe it is then. And also,
well, when I went on the Emohawk episode listing on Wikipedia, you can click on Ainsley Harriott's name, and that's what's come up. So I mean,
well, there we go.
Hard to tell under all that makeup, but I just saw the name and I was like, no way. I was like, surely. I mean, I love Ainsley Harriott. I think he's great.
That's brilliant. Probably any American listeners we've got will be like, who the hell
like,
is Ainsley
what are
Harriott?
you
What are you
talking-
talking about? Ainsley
Well,
Harriott used to present a cooking show.
A good cooking show.
Yeah, on our TV here. And in the sort of 90s, was it mainly? Late 90s?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he has become a meme in recent years for various things he's said that get taken out of context. Like, I don't know if this is too edgy for our show, but I mean, well, no, there's no explicit words. Basically, people took a clip where he's making some sort of meat dish, and there's... Again, out of context, it sounds a bit weird. But there's a line where he's like, basically, it's something about rubbing the food to make it, I don't know, more tender, more, whatever it is. But he does it and then looks directly into the camera and with the biggest smile on his face goes, "Give your meat a good old rub." And that line has been taken out of context so many times. And yeah, so maybe international listeners might know him from the meme. But yeah, UK listeners should definitely know him from Ready Steady Cook. But yeah, as I said, I rewound it. I couldn't believe it. But again, under all that makeup and the modulated voice,
yeah,
sure.
I think also he's got on his, in 1998, he did a TV special called Can't Smeg, Won't Smeg, in which is kind of set in universe to Red Dwarf, where it says on the synopsis that 20th century television chef Ainsley Harriott beams himself aboard the space vessel Starbug in order to test the crew's culinary skills.
Right,
we need to find this, and we need to review this.
Yeah, so he's clearly a fan then, or he's had associations. So
yeah.
I just thought that was a cool bit of trivia at the very end. I was like, that's cool.
I missed that. That is great.
Neat.
That is really good. Fantastic. Look, so we always, of course, have our regular features where we pick our favorite character of the episode. Could be for any reason whatsoever. It can be somebody that they could just be in one scene. They could just have one little moment you like, or it could be based on loads of things. But who is your favorite character in this week's episode?
I'm gonna have to give it to Cat / Dwayne Dibley, just because I love that side character anyway, and as much as I love Ace Rimmer as well, I just think Dwayne got a lot more funny lines and things to do this time around. So yeah, I'm gonna give it to Cat, which we don't, as we said, we don't often do. Because he often doesn't get enough. But yeah, I really enjoyed it this time around. What about you?
I'm going to give it to Dave's bride.
Oh,
I'm giving that my favorite. My favorite character in this episode is Dave's bride. That line when she goes, "Men," they're all.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so like when she's trying to seduce him in bed when they're in the marital bed, and it's just like under all that prosthetics, they've managed to convey so much still, and it's like the way she's stroking his face and stuff. It's hilarious. So I'm giving it to Dave's bride. I'm not going to try and pronounce her name.
Yes, yeah, maybe for the best. But no, good shout. Good choice. Very niche choice.
And the other thing we pick is our funniest moment of the episode. What was yours?
It's got to be the return and reveal of Dwayne Dibley. Perfectly shot, perfectly executed. I mean, you hear it in the audience, as we said. It's just a great reveal and a great return for that. Aces is good too, but obviously by then I guess you're sort of expecting it a little bit maybe because you've had the one with Cat. But yeah, it was the moment that made me laugh and sort of whoop the most, if you like. So yeah, it's got to be the return of Dwayne Dibley.
Yeah, that was very funny, and I that was a contender for me. I'm giving it to. It didn't make me laugh out loud so much, so I loved it, and I was like, oh, but it wasn't so much a laugh out loud moment for me as such. So I've gone for the line we've already mentioned, which is "You've dated worse." Yeah, but it was the disco lighting was terrible or something like that.
Yeah,
only in terrible disco lighting, and so I'm giving it to that line.
Solid.
So they probably got the biggest laugh from me. And finally, how many scutters out of 10 do you give this episode?
Well, for this one, I'm gonna give it just a 6.5 for me. I'm afraid.
Wow, okay.
As I said, the first third didn't really do much for me at all. I hate to say it because, as you know now, I really enjoy this show, but yeah, it didn't grab me really. There was very few of the gags that grabbed me. The ending, as discussed, I wasn't really a fan of that either. It was one of those cases where the abruptness, I feel at least, didn't work. It just sort of says, "Oh yeah, we're done," and a lot of rushed elements. I would have loved to have seen more of the Emohawk in action, if you like. That sort of thing I mentioned about getting to the Gelth world sooner. But, you know, I did enjoy, like, the return of Dwayne Dibley, Ace Rimmer. There's some good gags in there. But, yeah, for me, this just felt a bit lackluster in many departments. So, yeah, 6.5 for me.
Fair enough.
What about you?
I have given it a bit higher. I've given it 7.5.
Okay.
And I agree, it wasn't the funniest episode. As a comedy, if I was just marking it on how funny is this episode, it probably would have been lower. But there were other things about it I liked. I thought it was a good... after we got past that opening scene, from then on in, it was kind of a good adventure. It was just kind of a good adventure story and a good world building story, if that makes sense as well. There were lots of
makes sense.
From the past. It kind of set up a bit, like the fact that there is a Gelf sector. I like that, which we hadn't heard of before. You know, it's got nice bits of world building, and bringing the fact that it finds clever ways to bring in older elements as well, like Dwayne and Ace and the polymorph, was kind of like pleased. It's a very fan pleasing episode for that reason. I think it's what's it? Fan service. That's the word I'm looking for. So I kind of like those.
Yeah,
so the nice callbacks and but that beginning part and the fact that the ending was rushed and the fact that overall it wasn't a massively funny one means that I can't quite give it higher. But yeah, 7.5.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Well, that's another episode down, and we head on towards the end of Series 6. Only a few more episodes left. And yeah, if you haven't already, do go and follow us on our Twitter accounts for the podcast.
Please do.
It's at All Dead Dave Pod. Where on Twitter and elsewhere can people find you, Adam?
Where can you find me? Well, I am on YouTube, just as Adam Martyn with a Y. I make videos on all sorts, a lot of Doctor Who, but also other stuff I'm interested in. Just give the channel a scout out. I'm sure there's something there you'll like. And on Twitter, I'm Adam Martyn ATV for my daily ramblings, some memes, giveaways as well. I do a lot of Doctor Who themed giveaways because, as many Doctor Who fans will know, sometimes you simply accrue too much stuff and you need to get rid of it. But no, I do like doing them anyway. I think it's a great chance to, you know, allow people in the community to get stuff they might not have been able to before. So yeah, go and follow me there. What about you, Phil?
Well, you can find me on my YouTube channel if you're not already on it, because this podcast, of course, goes out on all the usual podcast platforms, but it also goes out on my YouTube channel as well.
It does.
And that is just my name, Philip Hawkins. And on there, you will find lots of pop culture commentary and reviews and things like that. Things like this podcast, but also things on Doctor Who, Star Trek, the MCU, all sorts of things. Basically, any geeky pop culture that I am interested in.
Aces.
So there we go. Another episode down. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment below telling us what you thought of the episode if you're watching on or listening on YouTube. And we will see you next time.
See you later.